are a researcher from East Global, and a very important one who's been doing lots of very interesting research also on city and city sustainability, I would say, in connection to pollution and to livability. So I must tell you, actually, Mark, before we start, that with Francesco and Carla, I want to tell you, because I need to ask your permission. We are kind of using your article, your last article on city, what are the evidence of potential improvement for cities, to draft a letter to our post-COVID Health Commission and Government Commission for them to take into consideration the very relevant points that are included in your article. So we Italianized it.
Good, excellent. And I'm very glad that,
okay.
At the moment, I don't know if you've had to look at our website, but we're writing different policy documents. And also I've written a few more simple articles in the conversation. Some of them are in Spanish, some of them are in English. But if you're interested, you can have a look. And some of it is based around also here, because I bring the COVID together with the article, the carbon neutral, livable and healthy city articles.
Yeah. Okay. We'll take a look on at that too. But ours is really a letter to those who are deciding where to put the money now.
Exactly. I think it's extremely important. And we're trying to put a letter together also with the ISE, the International Society of Environmental Epidemiology, the European Respiratory Society, and the American Thoracic Society, also to put a letter together to support sustainable or investment in sustainable solutions. So that probably may be good as well.
Yeah, because actually the first moves are not really very encouraging, unfortunately, in Italy. So so we really need to try to push from every side. So thank you for your contribution, and we'll go on your website, on the website, and explore it more.
Yeah.
Okay, so everyone is kind of agreeing that you speak in English, but they ask you to go slow.
Excellent. I will do that.
Thank you. So
Thank you for inviting me. I'll start. So my talk is, I gave the title, Could the COVID-19 crisis be the opportunity to make cities carbon neutral, livable and healthy? That's kind of the theme. Now I need to see how this one is going forward. My slide is not going forward yet.
Okay.
So here for is the coronavirus. You all know that we're affected by it. It's changed our life. We've got some answers, but we've still got many questions left, including what kind of impact it has on our lifestyle and on our cities. So some of the transmission factors that have been that seem to be quite effective to reduce the COVID-19 infections is hygiene, hand washing particularly, and also physical distancing. These two measures probably will stay in place for the rest of the year, even at the beginning of next year. So this is important, particularly the physical distancing, in what we're gonna do with our cities, because you need to have the space to do this. Of course, the other measure that we have is self-isolation when you get ill, so that's also being recommended. All of us are coming out of a lockdown at the moment, light to severe lockdowns. I think in Italy you've got a severe lockdown. Also here in Spain, we're actually still on the lockdown. We can do some activities, but not so many. Now, what we've seen during the lockdown, that there have been some major impacts. We've seen here in Barcelona, Catalonia, a reduction in physical activity of about 40%, because a lot of people had to stay at home. We see an increase in poor mental health, probably around 20%. We saw, unfortunately, also increasing in domestic violence. But then on the other side, the good side, or when I look at it from my perspective, is that we also saw reduced traffic by about 70-80%. We saw a reduction in air pollution levels that was even larger, 70-90% in NO2 particular, probably because it's so traffic related. Also a reduction in noise, about 10 decibel. People say they finally can hear birds singing again in the city. And so that's kind of a big difference. And unfortunately, we saw also a reduction in green space visits by about 90% because we're not allowed to go out and the parks were closed. What, of course, is not so good because we know that green space is good for example, for mental health, to improve mental health. And that's an issue, what we couldn't do. Now, if you look for change, generally people say there are some prerequisites for change. And one of the major ones is to have a crisis. Because a crisis, makes you rethink things, and people look for other solutions. And in particular here, the COVID pandemic, it's a very important crisis that can make changes. But if you want to, make changes, you also need to have the knowledge. You need to have technology. You need to have partnership. You need to have a vision, and you need to have leadership to make these changes. And I believe that we have quite a number of them at the moment, although, of course, not all of them. Particularly also when you look at leadership, some people look at a different direction. They don't want to go the direction we want to go, but I think we're getting better at that. We know nowadays that there is a relationship between urban design, how you design cities, how this affects behavior, how this affects environmental exposures, and then how this impacts morbidity and mortality. For example, we find that if you design and invest in infrastructure for cars, you're going to get a lot of cars, what leads to many people using the car, leads to higher air pollution levels, noise levels. You get heat island effects because you need to have a lot of roads for this. You get more stress. People in cars normally are more stressed. You get less social contacts and less physical activity, what leads to an increase in morbidity and also in mortality, premature mortality. On the other side, if you invest in design cities, say for active transportation, say cycling, you get more people to cycle, what leads to lower air pollution, lower noise levels. It needs less space when people cycle, so you have less, for heat island effects, less stress, more social contacts, and more physical activity. And generally, this reduces morbidity and also premature mortality. We know that suboptimal urban and transport planning can have a large impact on health. This is a study, a health impact assessment study we did in Barcelona, where we found that almost 20% of mortality is premature and is due to poor urban and transport planning. We're also quite a dense city with a lot of traffic, and that leads to some of these issues. The main contributor for this was that what people were not doing enough physical activity, what led to over 1,000 deaths, but also air pollution and noise contributed to around 600 deaths per year each year. Also, the heat island effect, extreme temperature, leads to almost 400 deaths per year, and then the lack of green space to over 100 deaths per year. Sorry. Normally, when you think about what is the impact on health from urban and transport planning, you think about traffic injuries, and that are around these cause around 30 deaths per year, what is around 100 times less than what we see from these factors that we have here. So we're going to have this, measure, this distancing measure in place, and that has an impact on transport, but also the use of public space. I just did a very quick table here, looking at different transport modes, how they may be affected, and what are some of the impacts. One of the main concerns we have is the contagion risk. So how is the transmission of the virus? What is given here for the column here for CR. Then I looked at how much public space the mode is taking up. What are the potential health benefits? And I will go into that later. What are the environmental impacts? So if you look at a car, for example, it's a great physical distancing measure. You sit there by yourself, you don't have any risk of getting contaminated or there's any transmission. So in that way, it's great. But as we know, the car takes up a lot of public space. Like, for example, in Barcelona, 60% of public space, like from roads, is being taken up by the car. Also, it doesn't have many health benefits. It's quite detrimental to health generally, particularly because we don't do any physical activity. And of course, it has high environmental impacts in terms of air pollution, noise, CO2 emissions. Then you have public transport, what is a bit in between. The big concern at the moment with public transport is the high transmission rate. A lot of people don't want to go use public transport. It's a big problem. There are some medium benefits to health and medium impacts to the environment. On the other side, when you look at active transportation modes like walking and cycling, the contamination risk is fairly low if you keep a distance. It doesn't take up much public space. It has many health benefits, in particular through physical activity, and the impact on the environment are low. So this gives you some kind of suggestion what we should be thinking of, in the near future. Many cities are starting to think that way, actually, and physical distancing measures are coming in place, and cities are rethinking how to use the space. One of them is Paris. They try to keep the cars out the city after the lockdown. They publicly announced this. But then also in Italy, Milan said that they have an ambitious scheme to reduce car use. I don't know if it's happening or not, but that's actually what is being in the news and being reported. So it's going to be interesting to see if this is actually going to happen. So I think there are some solutions what we have for the near future, and I want to give you a few examples. One is related to land use changes, how we use at the moment the space we have. Then in particular, try to reduce cars. I won't go into that, but I mentioned that we need to move towards active transportation. And then also I would like to address greening a little bit. So the first example I would like to give is from Barcelona. I guess many of you may have been to Barcelona. It's got a grid system. Originally, it was designed to have, by Ildefonso da 200 years ago, to have wide streets with a lot of fresh air coming into it. Unfortunately, what happened in the 60s when the cars came, the car use increased. And we see many cars. We have some of the highest car density per kilometer squared, what causes a lot of noise, air pollution. Also, originally, in the middle of these blocks, it was envisaged there would be a park, there would be a green space, but as you can see, that has been taking over as well. So what the city of Barcelona would like to do is reclaim the space that is currently used by cars. As what I said, 60% of public space, roads are public space, are used by cars. So this is the current system on the left, where you get one-way streets going up and down and left and right. And what they would like to do is reclaim the space for people. So they're doing this by cutting 4 junctions that the traffic can't go through. So the traffic needs to go around. And then this space in the middle would be used for active transportation. Oops. And also to plant more green space and other measures. So this is called the superblock. Now it is envisaged that 500 superblocks are being created, but at the moment only 3 or 6 have been created, depending how you count. So this is one of them, one of the latest one, around Sant Antoni Market. So on the top you see what it was before, road with cars going through, cars being parked. And so after the transformation, we have no cars anymore, but there is space for people to sit and walk around. Now this photo is taken when there are not many people around, but often there are more people around, and also you see a bit more green space. So what I said, the city wants to implement 500. We did a health impact assessment where we modeled the different exposures and said, if all the 500 would be implemented, how many premature deaths could it save each year? And what we found is that each year we could save over 600, almost 700 premature deaths. The largest contribution comes from a reduction in NO2. Almost 300 deaths are being prevented, followed by noise, heat, green spaces, and physical activity. In this case, we didn't fully model the physical activity because we only looked at changes in transport mode and didn't take into account that people may be walking more into the neighborhood because we don't have any data. But as you can see, implementing this superblocks has a large impact on health. Also, it improves livability because these areas becoming much more nicer to hang around. You don't have to listen to car. And also, it reduces CO2 emissions because of the reduction in cars. We estimated around a 20% reduction in the number of cars. Cars have been promoted, we have many cars around, and electric cars have been promoted as the solution for many issues, including climate change. I don't think they're the solution. Yes, they reduce CO2 emissions to some extent, and also they reduce air pollution a little bit and noise, but you still have air pollution from non-tailpipe emissions. And of course, if you use a car, you still don't get physical activity. Furthermore, electric car still needs to take up a lot of space in the city that you actually can use in a much better way, for example, by planting trees. Therefore, I'm more to go with active transportation. Now, many of us walk already a lot, but what we don't do in the south, for example, is cycling. I come from the Netherlands where we cycle a lot, so I'm like to promote cycling. What we see is that there are many benefits of cycling. It reduces the risk of premature mortality. It combines transport with the gym, because if you cycle to work, for example, then you get perhaps 20-30 minutes of physical activity in, so you don't need to go to the gym. A lot of people don't have time to go to the gym. Well, physical activity is very important for your health. Also, it creates less air pollution, less noise. We don't have CO2 emissions. As what I said before, cycling takes up much less space than a car. And also what we see is that cyclists are much happier than car users. Furthermore, what we know is that the benefits of physical activity that you get through cycling well outweigh any risk of inhaling more air pollution or the risk of accidents. The risk of accidents stops a lot of people actually using the bicycle to get around. This is a study we did in 167 cities in Europe. We looked what is the relationship between safe segregated cycling lanes per 100,000 people. So how many kilometers of cycling lane is in the city, And what is the mode share of cycling in that particular city? And what you can see is that up to about 25% mode share, there's almost a linear relationship between how much cycling lane, safe cycling lane you have available for people to cycle and what is the mode share. So this suggests that people need to have safe cycling infrastructure to start cycling. Over 25%, this breaks down because there are other factors that may be important. But for me, this is an important message that you need to put in good infrastructure to get people to cycle. Of course, you never know what's coming first in this, if it's first the cyclist and then the cycling lane, or first the cycling lane and then the cyclist, but I think there's a strong connection between the two. Also, we estimated that in these 167 cities, we could prevent over 10,000 premature deaths each year if we would get the mode share up to about 25% of cycling. You know, this is mainly because of the increase in physical activity that people would get related with the cycling. The other aspect is green space. Just looking at this picture, you think, that's a very nice place to be. I mean, and you feel straight away more relaxed, and you would like to go walking there. We know that because green space is extremely important for people to reduce stress, to increase restoration, and many other aspects of physical and mental health. Unfortunately, in many cities, we don't have enough green space. We don't have it in the streets, or we don't have specific parks. We know that greening cities may have many health benefits, including a longer life expectancy, fewer mental health problems, better cognitive functioning, both for children and also for the elderly. People have a better mood, and also we see healthier babies. Furthermore, what we see with green space is that it may mitigate air pollution, reduce heat island effects, and also reduce the noise levels. Furthermore, there is some uptake of CO2 by trees. And, you know, if you replace roads and parking, what you use for cars at the moment, and you put there green space, then you can change an environment that's detrimental to health at the moment to something that's beneficial to health. We looked in Philadelphia, where they have at the moment 20% of green cover in the city. They want to increase it to 30%. And we estimated, or Michel Kondo did, how many deaths could be prevented each year if they would increase the tree cover in Philadelphia from 20% to 30%. And what we found that each year, 403 deaths could be prevented in the city. And in particular, the benefits were greater for the lower socioeconomic neighborhoods in the city compared to the higher socioeconomic neighborhoods. Because often what you see, particularly in US cities, is that there's not enough green space in the areas that are poor. Also, that you could translate that in economic benefits, but are also quite large. But it shows that, you know, increasing green space in cities really can have a large impact on health. Now, I come from a public health background. I can say, you know, what is healthy, what is not, but I can't make the changes. So that's why it's very important to link up with actually people that can make the changes, like urban planners, transport planners, housing associations, architects, the education sector, and we need to all work together and talk to each other, you know, to say what would we like to see. We have to remember that we need systemic approaches. We can't address just, say, air pollution or noise, but we should tackle many different things at the same time. So air pollution, noise, heat islands, lack of green space, lack of physical activity, and nowadays also the COVID-19. We need holistic approaches that don't only address health, but at the same time also address livability, sustainability, the climate crisis, and also equity issues, because equity is a big issue as well in cities. I think with some of the things what I just talked about, we can address many of these aspects at the same time. Now, this is going to cost money, but I think also the COVID pandemic, the crisis, provides an opportunity. We've been promised large financial stimulus packages to keep the economy going, but only the money can, of course, only spend once, and therefore we should spend it in the right way. We should spend the money with ties attached that says it's not only that it's going to be good for the economy, but it's at the same time it's going to be good for sustainability and for livability issues and health issues in our cities, and that we're also creating more just societies and cities. So we need to make sure that we put in these indicators as well, that when the money is being spent, that we don't think only what is the economic impact, but also what is the impact on health, what is the impact on livability, what's the impact on sustainability, what is the impact on equity. Can we do it? I think so. There are some examples. This is in Seoul. What I always like this example. On the left side, you saw what was happening in Seoul before. They had a big motorway running through the city. They got fed up with it, took the motorway out and put a river in with lots of green space and a small road on the side. Looks much nicer. It's a much nicer environment, and no one complained about it. This is on the left side. You see an old hospital here. What you can see, this is the hospital with a park next to it. This is a children's hospital. The hospital was old. They needed to tear it down, and they asked the children, what kind of facilities would you like to see? And the children said, we want to have the hospital with more of a park around that we can go outside to walk around and get a bit of green space and enjoy, relax, etc. So what they did, they built a new hospital, but they put part of it underground and covered it with green space. And also where the old hospital was, they put in new green space. So we created much more green space and a nice new hospital. So this is an innovative use of the space. Now, some cities already say they go car-free, but I think it's a good objective. Hamburg says they're going to be car-free by 2034, mainly because of climate change reasons. But it's a good plan. And of course, we already have some car-free neighborhoods. This is a car-free neighborhood in Freiburg. It's called Vauban. It's a neighborhood with sustainable housing, no cars allowed inside, and a lot of green space. Still, it has quite a lot of density, as you can see, but it's a wonderful neighborhood to go. I visited myself, you can hear the birds singing, and people walk around, and it's really pleasant to be. And people, to go to the city center, they use the bicycle, or there's a tram line to go to the city center. If you want to read a little bit more, I wrote an article summarizing some of this. You mentioned it before. I can email it to you, or it's freely accessible on the website. Also, we did a book a couple of years ago with much more information, bringing together urban and transport planners, environment and health people. You can buy the book. It's quite expensive. If you want to get a PDF copy, you can send me an email, and I'm happy to send you an electric copy. And so this is kind of the end of my little story. What I believe is that we need green cities, active cities, clean cities, and social cities for healthy people. Thank you so much for your attention. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Mark, for the presentation. It was very interesting, and it sounds ideal. It would be
ideal or idealistic?
I don't
People
know.
say, are we ever going to get this?
Yeah, it's such a challenge It's really a challenge. What I would like to ask you, and I then will leave space to all the other people, is that sometimes I think that some resistance to apply this change and to make this project possible, to make cities more livable, doesn't come only from the authorities, but it sometimes also comes from some people and some citizens, especially in Italy, for example, who want to take the car and park it absolutely down, out of their door. And so, I don't know, I want to know if you feel it too, or if you think this change is possible also, and it will become a popular change in the next future, hopefully.
Yeah, I think it's true, and people are really attached to their car, and it's still a status symbol, and you think you quickly get in your car, go through the city, but then often they hit some congestion and they're stuck, and often it's not a very pleasant experience, but people grow up with that. But we see changes. I mean, I must say here in the south, it's still difficult, but I come myself, from Holland. I grew up there. And you see many more cities where they try to push the car out of the city center, and it becomes much nicer. And, there were the same complaints, but as soon as you change it and people see the changes afterwards, they say, oh, this is really nice, actually. Why didn't we do that before? The other sector that's often objecting is shops, because they say if people can't come by car anymore, we're going to lose business. Actually, what most examples have shown, or cases in the past have shown, is that as soon as you get the cars out and you make a street pedestrian, or you reduce the car use considerable, actually the business goes up, because it's much more pleasant for people to go to these particular streets, hang around and do their shopping. And people don't like change in general. I mean, they're stuck for what they want, and that makes it quite difficult. Now, one part, perhaps a sad part in a way, I think, but probably a good part as well, is that, with this crisis, people's finances are going to be hit hard. And we know that cars are very expensive to maintain. People don't realize that they spend thousands of euros each year to keep the car. And as soon as you get rid of it, you get extra money. But you still need to get around. And then I think where it comes in that, if you get people to cycle, to walk, they actually feel much better. If they can do this in a nice neighborhood or nice streets, they feel much better. Most people that do some physical activity actually feel better. They're happier generally because of our evolution. We're built to do physical activity, and a lot of people don't get enough physical activity. So, we can't make changes in one go. It's going to be step by step, neighborhood by neighborhood, and perhaps street by street, slowly taking over stuff. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with Copenhagen there. They reduced the space for cars 1% each year, so that people actually wouldn't notice much. But after 10 years, you would reduce the space by 10% and 20%. And, Copenhagen is one of the cities, I think 50% of trips are made by bicycles. So it's super high, and it's a wonderful city to go around. It's all possible, but it's for hard work.
Yeah, it's hard work. It's true. Thank you. Let's see if anyone has questions.
Yeah, I had a question about the superblocks. I think I just saw it coming past. And so a few superblocks have been implemented in Barcelona. Now, it's always the question how many of them there are, because the Gracia neighborhood is kind of a big superblock that was done many years ago. And then there are some other neighborhoods where they say they did the superblock, but in principle, when I start counting, there are only 3 of them. One of them is in Poblenou, where they introduced a part of the superblock. Was a lot of resistance against that. People didn't want to have it because they were afraid they couldn't drive their car around it. The second one is Sant'Antoni, the photo that I showed you. And the third one is Otta. And then they're planning 3 more. Now, it's not going very fast because it's a participatory process. So there's a lot of input from citizens in the area. And as what I said, people generally don't like change. You know, as soon as you make some changes, people think, oh, no, I don't want to do that. So in that way, it's not easy, but hopefully, you know, now the city council here says they're going to increase the number of cycling lanes, kilometer of cycling lanes, and also more space for people to walk. So some of them are being implemented now. So I'm kind of positive about that. There was a question about NO2, I think.
Yeah, I think Enzo.
I ask a question because I have noticed in one of the first slide that you indicated the reduction by 70% or 90% also in NO2. But in Genoa, we had the stop of traffic, but we found at the maximum a reduction by 50% and less than 40% near the harbor. So I understood, did I understood quite well that you indicated that numbers?
Yeah, no, it's, I must say this was up to 70 to 90%, depending on the days. I think the latest number I saw was that over the 2 months of the lockdown, there's about a 60% reduction of NO2. So it depends what you look at. I mean, for example, one day we had all the measurement stations were under 10 microgram per meter cube NO2. What was very low, was never seen before. But then, you know, the next morning it went up to, on average, 30 micrograms or so. So it varied quite a lot. And this is just to give an indication that large reductions were possible at some days, some time periods, to show what was possible. For PM, the reductions were less, actually. So that's why I focused on NO2. So
thank you very much.
I was going to ask, if you know how exactly the participatory process of SUPERBLOCK works?
I don't know exactly, but so what the Ajuntamento, the city council does is they make a plan for a SUPERBLOCK. They identify an area, and then they hold meetings in the area, neighborhood meetings, you know, in community centers. Also, there's a platform, it's called Decidim, where people can put in suggestions of how to change it, how to do this kind of things. And then the city council goes back and tries to implement whatever is being suggested. How exactly they do it or how they decide in the end, I don't know. But, you know, as often with this kind of processes, I mean, it's, yeah, you know, there's a lot of people, and people have opposite opinions. So at the end, you need to come to some agreement. But I don't know exactly how they do this. And you probably have to go to ask the city council for the exact process.
Thank you.
I was just noticing that you mentioned about Philadelphia, that they were planning on adding 10% to a 20% green. And today, when I was, you know, trying to organize our letter, and I wanted to express the amount of green that we have on the average in Italian cities, it seems that it's 4%. It's sad.
Yeah, I know, because I think the Italian cities are pretty old, and so that's often they're quite dense, and there's not so much space for green space. I think when you have American cities, they're much more spread out, and so you see much more green space. But still, I think it's not enough. I mean, we
Yeah,
have
but
to.
even when you have Italian cities that have grown, you still have 4%.
Really, wow. Yeah, it's
So,
very low. That we need more.
yeah, definitely. So we do have more questions.
Yeah. There's a question about rain. I don't.
So Federica wrote, it is difficult to discourage the car when the workplace is far away, when you have to accompany your children to different places or it rains often.
Yeah, that's true. I think, first of all, far away shouldn't be so much of a problem. I mean, what is far away? I mean, if you live in another city and you need to come to the city where you work, you go 50 kilometers, yes, probably the car or the train may be the best option. I think, if you live 10 kilometers away from your work, some people don't like to cycle on a normal bike, but there are now also electric bikes. And a lot of people use electric bikes to commute. Rain, I think it's not really a problem because it depends on your clothes. I come from Holland and it rains a lot in Holland, and no one stops cycling because it rains. It's I think if you don't get much rain and then it rains, it may be an issue. But if you're in a place where it rains a lot, you just put some proper clothing on, and then it's fine. The the one thing is the children. Yes, what's often is a problem. I think what you see that children needs to go somewhere, they can't cycle or it's not safe enough to cycle, so the parents need to take the kids by car to the school or to some activity, and there are not always very good alternatives to that. Although I would say that I'm a great believer in more supporting local communities, local economy, and try to have activities that you do even with kids nearby, so you can walk or cycle to these places that the kids need to go to.
Then we have another question from Francesco, and he asks, is Barcelona experiencing solutions for logistics?
What does that mean exactly? That for logistics in terms of getting around for mobility?
No, I think commercial delivery, is that
Yeah.
Francesco?
Yeah. So that's a problem, because what they found was here as well in Barcelona is that there were many little vans delivering to the markets, and that causes quite a lot of air pollution. And so now they're trying to set up some system that the deliveries are being shared, so that you don't have 10 vans driving to the market, dropping off stuff, but that one or two are picking up all the stuff and then delivering it at the market. Because, we have many markets here in Barcelona. The same with the shops. Of course, you need to have delivery vans or to get the goods in. And I hope so that in the future, these will actually change to electric, because they're quite polluting often. They run on diesel, and these are some of the first that you actually should be able to change. There is some resistance because it's more expensive to go to electric at the moment, but the city council is in negotiation on how to do this.
That's interesting. That there's a big, let's say, network of sustainable finance, and which I actually participate, watching their meetings and webinars, and there's so much that companies can really do to reduce their own impact. Because starting, that is, I think, very important to also highlight how much each company can really activate within its own structure. It was funny because when the COVID lockdown kind of started, there was a lady that was participating to our NO2 project that called and said, "Hey, listen, I'm living really kind of close by. I mean, 2 kilometers or something from my working place, and my boss, we are 2,000 people, is asking for everyone not to take their cars because they." So sometimes, things that would seem obvious to us, that the head of a company would say, maybe take a bike instead of taking your own car to go to the office. But then again, it takes the effort of reaching them and highlighting which practical, simple measures they don't probably have time to think about.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, and people don't want to change; they do what they do. But there are, in certain countries, certain companies, they stimulate people to come by bicycle to work, and they give tax breaks, so it's very cheap actually to come. And partly it's because people that cycle tend to be healthier. You do physical activity. People are ready to come to work, and as long as they don't get an accident, I must say. And so there are advantages for the company as well. And a lot of companies, when they start looking to analyze different processes, also how they get around or whatever, they can do it in much more efficient ways that are cost effective and make people healthier. And but often people don't have time for that, or the companies don't, so you need to make suggestions to them, I think.
Yeah, actually, I think I must tell you something, Mark. I would like you to take away the Milan slide from your presentation, because what we're experiencing right now in Milano is totally the opposite of what the Guardian and all the international newspapers published. The Milan Council, City Council, decided that they are going to do 35 kilometers of cycling lanes. You figure that we have about 1,900 kilometers of roads in Milano, and part of those 35 kilometers were already being worked on for the past 2 years, and they managed to get, with a very fancy communication move, to reach the Guardian and all the international press.
But they,
But the next day they suspended both low emission zones. They suspended all preferential lanes for public transport, so private cars can go in the public transport lane. So please, for the time being, until new notice, I will give you the notice, but take that slide
no,
away.
I put your story in there that actually they report it in public, and then they don't do it in practice. So I use your story if you don't mind.
Absolutely, absolutely. I can send you. I've written it to quite a few journalists, and I would love to reach the Guardian to tell them what is really happening, because it's quite worrisome for us, because you absolutely know that we are probably the most polluted city in
Yeah. No, but that's good to know. Please send it to me as well. That And did you get in contact with the Guardian journalist who did it or not? Who wrote about it?
No, but no,
Yeah,
I don't. I'm not sure they would reply, but
no, but you can write to them, and normally they answer.
We should write them.
we should. We should.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because there's also, I think that what is happening now, it's very sad and it's very risky, because we reached the 2 low emission zones with huge efforts on the citizenship to fight for them and better air quality. We still have very bad air quality, and what is happening right now is going back 50 years. And so, you know, I would write to you the data and the details.
Yeah. No, but I think it's good, because I think, you know, a lot of cities say they're doing something and they're not doing. So it's good to put pressure on them. And perhaps we can approach the Guardian, or we can approach, you know, citylab.com.
No.
Have a look at the website, citylab.com. It's a website that deals with a lot of city issues, and they have quite of active journalists. And perhaps you could write to them and, you know, make it as a story and say from, hey, the cities are saying things, but they're not acting as what they do. And perhaps you need to write about this. I mean, I just put it in the chat. I mean, they're very good at, if you see, I mean, sometimes I write about our studies as well. It's all about city issues.
Yeah, I know. I want to share with you something, because, you know, to react to the situation, we made a proposal as an NGO to, let's say, calm down traffic for at least 6 months. To make sure that we at least had the time to arrange for a cycling structures, because, I mean, we are a city that is, you know, far back with reference to every other European cities. I mean, we have a very, very low cycling quota, which is about 6%. And
still more than Barcelona, isn't it?
What?
It's still more than Barcelona.
Oh, is it really? Wow.
We have only 3%.
Oh, that's terrible. But you know, and then we asked for the transport rays and circular lines to be simply walkable and cycling and public transportation until the end of October. Because we think that if the people would try for at least a few months, they can still go around in the other streets, but at least they should be given the opportunity to have this very tough change, you know, and
yeah, no, that's great.
And then, well, nobody really took care of our proposal, but I published on the proposal the the lungs of my brother who had COVID, and he's a doctor, and, you know, to show that we're also supposed to be, you know, protecting the people that have had COVID. We have so many people that in Lombardy and in Milan and in this region, that it's, you know,
No, that's good. I mean, that's great. I mean, that's beautiful. Yeah, you know, it takes a lot of effort to get things done. You know, people, cities don't want to change so quickly, and we need to put a lot of effort and keep going and going. I mean, and it's the same here. We put a lot of you know, pressure on Barcelona City Council, so they actually start thinking, keep doing things. But as soon as they don't have pressure, they won't do anything. So
exactly, it's really, so, you know, because I believe, as you say, that this is such a crucial time and urgent time. If you don't do it immediately, it will be, just
Opportunity lost.
huge opportunity.
Yeah, I believe so too.
There's someone from Rome, Paolo. Oh, they started to paint the first kilometers of cycle lanes in Rome. That's good.
But they suspended the policy for clean air. That's not so good.
And actually, that was our gain, because we did also a citizen science with Paolo, the one who's writing, and the mayor Raggi came to our press conference to launch the low emission zone area. So we're quite
that's
sad.
nice.
We're seeing all our work, crumble down.
I know. But you need to keep going. That's important.
Yeah. Did you, do you have any suggestion of, how can I say, citizens' actions that you found extremely effective, whether in Holland or in Barcelona? Like that were...
I don't know anything particular, but I think raising awareness is one of the most important things. I mean, even things like the strawberry project, YouTube's, you're using.
I have to stop them. Okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that. Well, family life, but yeah, and I don't know what is super effective. I think a lot of on a community level, working on different things. I mean, works. I mean, on a smaller level, but when you go up to the city level, there's often also other interests that don't want to make changes, so that makes it difficult. So I think it's really fighting street by street in a way, as I would say, that is the most effective, and keeping pressure on the transport planners, on the engineers. I mean, to keep making changes then.
Yeah. Do you have any? I mean, were there any particularly positive reactions of SUPERBLOCK after like 1 year that they were implemented? I mean, was there any?
Yeah, so not in the Poblenou area. There was a lot of resistance, but now people are getting used to it. It's fine. In the Sant Antoni, people were much more positive, and they were looking forward, and they have a very positive experience. So that's good.
Thank
at
you
least.
so much, Mark. Really.
Yeah, lovely that to be able to speak, and good luck with your work. I think it's so important, and hopefully,
yeah. I'll send you data about to compare the slide of the Guardian with the reality. Okay.
Oh, that's good. Excellent. That would be great. I mean, I love two sides of the story, and a story is only good if it's true. Then.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. Okay.
Thanks so much. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Ecco, adesso ripassiamo all'italiano.
Eccoci.
È stato molto interessante, devo dire. Anche interessante il fatto che lui sia interessato a sapere cosa succede davvero.
Sì, molto. Bene.
Adesso vorrei chiedere se collegate ci sono delle persone che hanno partecipato, stanno partecipando al nostro progetto di monitoraggio. Qualcuno ha voglia di rivelarsi?
Sì, io ci sono, Anna, Angelo Riccio da Napoli.
Ciao Angelo, ciao, tu sei il progetto. Angelo è il nostro referente scientifico di Napoli. professor Angelo Riccio. Poi abbiamo,
Da Roma con 4 punti.
chi è?
Giacomo Di Giacomo. No, Giancarlo Di Giacomo. E anche Paolo De Luca.
Paolo è anche un nostro, come dire, è stato il coordinatore 2 anni fa del progetto di Roma, quest'anno ha aiutato Anna e Alessandra, che purtroppo in questo momento non riuscivano oggi a partecipare, ma siccome purtroppo abbiamo la, diciamo, imprevista impossibilità del dottor Forastiere di partecipare, mi stavo domandando se qualcuno aveva voglia di raccontarci che cosa si aspetta di poter ottenere dalla sua ricerca. Ah, Anna Becchi, eccola, ciao! Ecco, anche Enzo l'hanno fatto, l'hanno fatto.
Buongiorno.
Forse, insomma, l'idea è un po' di capire. Claudio, invece,
Sì, buongiorno a tutti. Scusate se mi sono collegato un po' in ritardo, mi sentite?
sì,
Sì.
sì, Claudio
Ah,
è
perfetto, ok. Purtroppo non potrò neanche rimanere troppo con voi perché ho degli impegni familiari, però ecco, mi farà piacere seguire quanto sarà possibile. Io semplicemente chiedevi se avevo partecipato al rilevamento, se avevamo partecipato al rilevamento? Sì, ok. Io avevo partecipato a livello individuale l'anno scorso. Ah no, non è vero, l'anno scorso non avevo partecipato, semplicemente avevo seguito un po' le cose. Quest'anno abbiamo messo 2 rilevatori qui a Torpignattara, che peraltro nella vostra precedente rilevazione portava un po' la bandiera nera delle concentrazioni di ossidi di azoto, perché era proprio il punto in cui c'era la concentrazione più alta. È un incrocio, qualche romano c'è qui tra di voi, non lo so, comunque Torpignattara c'è un incrocio malefico in cui appunto, si rilevò la maggiore concentrazione. Quest'anno insieme a un gruppo di volontari di Torpignattara, un gruppo così di volontari, riqualifichiamo Torpignattara che più che altro si occupa di tenere un po', di sopperire alle mancanze dell'azienda municipale per la nettezza urbana, diciamo, facendo un po' cercando di sistemare, fino a che è stato possibile, che adesso ovviamente non è più possibile, siamo tutti dentro casa. Però ecco, con questo gruppo abbiamo deciso di mettere 2 rilevatori, uno sempre all'incrocio, quello principale, e uno più nelle zone